inventions. Tell me about, I see that in your pocket you've got an invention around HIV and circumcision.
Well, it's an interesting. It's a piece of plastic, right? So with a rubber band. But one of the great challenges of our time, and certainly here in Africa, is preventing HIV.
That's right.
And obviously treating people who get the virus.
Is it the issue in Israel as well? Not really.
Less, but it exists.
It exists.
Yeah. And the challenge is, how do we help more people avoid getting infected?
Yes.
And scientists and doctors at the World Health Organization found that that circumcision lowers the risk for males to get HIV. But the challenge across Africa is there are not enough hospitals and not enough doctors and not enough. And an Israeli doctor came up with this invention. It's called Prepex.
So it's plastic, right?
Yeah. It's a piece of plastic, 2 pieces of plastic, and you can go to the website and learn a little bit more, prepex.com, Prepex. And what it allows for is a non-surgical solution.
Non-surgical circumcision.
Right, and thousands of people across this continent and in other places have had this procedure through their governments. It's one of the procedures that's used by the Department of Health here in South Africa, and in Swaziland, and in Lesotho, and
so they're really starting to roll this out.
They really are, and it's inexpensive, and it does no knives.
Yes,
and it can be done with nurses and no doctors, and thousands and thousands of young men on this continent will be at less of a risk.
I wish that was around when I had my circumcision. Because they used the knife and they said, okay, it's numb. And then they brought out the knife and then they just went, whoosh, and I was like, oh my goodness.
Well, no one asked me. I was 8 days old.
Right.
Right. In Jewish tradition, boys are circumcised when they're 8 days old.
Wow.
And so we don't remember.
That's right. Yeah. That's hectic. I love that innovation. Talking about innovation, talk about things. You brought us some tomatoes, Israeli tomatoes, not normal tomatoes, Israeli tomatoes. Tell us about that.
Well, the brand is Israel.
Does it come from Israel?
No, they don't. Well, that's the fun part, Stephen, is they're grown in South Africa.
Okay.
Using Israeli seedlings and technology, because Israel is an expert in food security, and despite the fact that we're very dry and desert, and we had big challenges of drought that we've solved and won. But because of that, our agriculture is very, very careful on the use of water and has become very advanced and well known. And so a number of companies that grow fruits and vegetables across South Africa use these Israeli technologies. And one supermarket chain, because of the name is Israel is famous for agriculture, they called their best tomatoes Israeli tomatoes.
Wow.
Because it was a brand that the consumer says, ooh, it must be good, they must be tasty.
So it tastes different than normal tomatoes? Or?
No, they're good tomatoes. Take a bite, Stephen. Take a bite. It's good? Yeah. But
I never thought I'd be eating tomatoes on my show.
but the fun thing is they're grown in South Africa, and they're high quality, and they create jobs, and they advance the knowledge of food security, which is so important across Africa for Africa to be able to feed itself.
And tomatoes are fruit and a vegetable, which is good for you.
And
I love eating them. Do you eat them like this?
Oh, I'll join you.
This is good stuff, man. Yeah. Really good.
Throw one to the cameraman too. Here,
yeah,
catch.
give me one. All right. While we finish our tomatoes, let me put mine as well. Briefly, some of the projects that you're involved in here in South Africa.
Now, one of the biggest projects that we've done over the last year is I just mentioned the fact of Israel being dry.
Yes.
And you know, and I don't know how much you know the Bible, but you remember the story of Joseph and the Technicolor Dreamcoat, right?
Yes,
the famous musical.
Yes.
But think about how that story started, right? Joseph was one of Jacob's 12 sons, and was sold into slavery, went to Egypt, and then became a big leader. And Jacob thought his son was dead, but a famine and drought touched the Holy Land, and he sent his sons to Egypt, to Africa.
Wow.
Because there was wheat and there was food there.
Yeah.
And then it became a musical.
Have you seen it?
I have seen it.
You went in it.
But from that time until today, in the area of Israel, we don't get enough rain, we don't have enough water.
And so what's happening here in South Africa.
That's exactly right. And so, but in Israel, we've developed technology like drip irrigation for farming, like desalinating water, using seawater, taking the salt out so that we can drink it, like recycling water that we use. After we use it at home, we reuse it for agriculture a second time.
Wow.
And so Israel is the world champion, really the best in the world
so we can learn a lot
at water management. And so we've spent a lot of time over the last year sharing some of our lessons, bringing experts from Israel to talk to South African officials, delegations from South Africa, from government and from the largest water boards have come to Israel recently to use us as a test study, to use us as, and to try to find the kinds of things. Like, I'll give an example. In Israel, or in South Africa, the pipes that municipalities have that take the water to your home leak.
And sometimes burst.
And so municipalities in South Africa say that you lose between 30 and 40% of the water because these pipes are not kept up to date. In Israel, the number is between 3 and 5%.
Wow.
If we can find a way to improve the piping and the way to monitor it, we have now technologies to use through a smartphone to be able to know where, because the challenge is they're underwater, the pipes, right? You've got to be able to find them. You don't want to dig up all of them.
No.
There's the whole piping network. You want to be able to go to the right spot.
Yes.
And so if we can just drop that from 40% to 20%, think of the amount of water South Africa has. That's a huge difference.
That is.
In Israel, 95% of our farmers use drip irrigation instead of just spilling water on for farming. In South Africa, it's between 3 and 6%.
Sure.
If we can increase that to 30%. These simple things, right? You don't have to take shorter showers, even though that, they say that. But you still should. You're right.
We all need to smell clean, right?
take a shorter shower. But the big ticket items, the big ways to save water, are municipalities and the pipe things, and agriculture. If we can improve that for South Africa, and if Israel can play a tiny role, just a little role as a friend, that would be meaningful. And the truth is for me, over the last year, that's been the biggest project I've worked on, telling Israel's story and how a little country that gets much less rain than South Africa, that's much drier than your country, doesn't have a problem of drought, even though we don't have very much water, but because we manage it very, very carefully, and South Africa can too.
Wow. That was amazing. History lesson educating me. Thank you. Ambassador Arthur Lenk, thank you for your time.
Thanks for having me on, Stephen.
It was a privilege. I really appreciate you being here, and I loved it. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Talking Point was Stephen Taylor. Another episode. Catch us back next week, same time, same place. And of course, don't forget to interact on social media at Stephen Taylor SA on Facebook and Twitter. Where can we find you on Twitter?
I am on Twitter. Twitter at Arthur Lenk.
Arthur Lenk.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you, Arthur. Thank you, sir. Catch you back next week, same time, same place. God bless. Thank you. Bye-bye.